evening, everyone. Are we okay in the booth in Facebook land to start? We're good? Okay. All right. All right. Welcome. We're now calling to order our regular meeting of the North Augusta Planning Commission. If we could please get started with roll call.
Aaron Slade.
Brad Harbison. Bob Bigger.
Jesse Elliott.
Lisa Christie. Chelsea Wendell.
Okay. And I'm your chair, Christine Crawford. All right. If we could please have the approval of the minutes. Were there any corrections or changes? And if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right, Mr. Paradise, are there any changes, additions, or subtractions to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
All right. And with that, our agenda item today is the Georgia Avenue Traffic Calming and Pedestrian Access Study. So the format for this is going to be a review of the study recommendation. So we have a presentation on that, and then we'll vote on a recommendation. And we'll also see if there are members of the community who'd like to comment or ask questions of the presenter as well. And if so, then we'll go through the protocol for that at that time. Okay. All right. Tommy, anything?
Yes, ma'am. Just as part of the background, this started in 2021. This is being funded through an Arts Augusta Regional Transportation Study grant, and it comes through SCDOT from the Federal Highway. And that started in 2021. It was a $50,000 grant. The city is on the hook for 20% of that, which is $10,000, and it's to look at the corridor from the bridge to Martintown Road, with particular emphasis on the downtown business area. It is to slow down traffic, make it safer, and also make it more pedestrian friendly. So with that said, and there was a preliminary report that was presented to council. Council looked into it, and they decided that the intersection of, let me get this right, Carolina, Georgia, I think it's Jackson, needed a little bit more study. And so we went back to DOT and got authorization for another $20,000, which the city was on the hook for an additional $4,000 of that. And Kimberly Horn did a deep dive into that intersection and how we could make that intersection better. The consultant was a competitive RFP that went through the federal appropriations approvals and all of that. So it was a competitive grant, or that how we picked Kimberly Horn. And then Joe, he is the engineer, and I'll have him come up. He is also grew up in North Augusta. Y'all may have seen him before, and his parents still reside here. So after that, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
And
All right.
Joe, if you, in your introduction, we asked that people give their name and the address for the folks on Facebook land and for the record.
Sure. Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Robertson. I live at 426 Litchfield Lane, Lexington, South Carolina, so just up the road a little bit. As Tommy mentioned, I am a North Augusta native, so my parents still live here, so always happy to be back in town, particularly talking about this project and seeing if we can find some ways to slow traffic down and improve safety on Georgia Avenue. So hopefully everybody's getting settled back into normal life after a thrilling Masters week. So definitely an exciting one to witness this year. So as Tommy mentioned, the purpose of this project was really to develop the long-term vision and strategy for a vibrant, pedestrian-oriented Main Street in Georgia Avenue in the heart of downtown North Augusta. This is a goal that was identified in y'all's latest comprehensive plan. So through that's kind of how this project came about. So the goals that we established for this study early on, we really wanted to be able to identify and recommend some specific improvements for Georgia Avenue, particularly geared towards traffic calming, pedestrian access and safety, things of that nature. Once we had that list of improvements, we wanted to be able to rank them based on things such as cost, impact, and feasibility of getting those implemented. And then the third piece was working to identify funding sources to get those projects constructed and in place. So an overview of the study area, again, as Tommy mentioned, we went from the bridge all the way up to Martintown Road. But as y'all are aware, really the heart of this segment of Georgia Avenue is the downtown area, basically from Center Street right out front of where we are tonight, up to the kind of five-legged intersection of Georgia Avenue at Carolina and Jackson. Within that downtown stretch, we've got 3 existing traffic signals. The rest of the intersections are stop sign controlled. And then we've got the 2, I'll call them mid-block crossings, but just because they don't exist at a traffic signal, we've got the 2 marked crosswalks there at Pine Grove Avenue in front of the Pink Dipper. Basically, it's just the 2 lines with the yield to pedestrian signs in the median. So as part of the data that we collected for this study, we did collect speed data, turning movement volume counts during peak hours, and also daily volume counts. The first one I'll cover here is the speed data to try to determine, how fast are folks driving through Georgia Avenue. You can see the 2 days that we collected. It was in August of 2022. So based on this data, and I know there's a lot of information on here, what this is telling us is that there's some speeding issues on the very southern end of the corridor and also on the northern end of the corridor. So traffic tends to slow down as you get sort of in the business district of downtown, but as folks are either coming to and from the bridge or leaving downtown headed up towards Martintown Road, the 85th percentile speed is greater than 5 miles per hour over the posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour, which from a traffic engineering standpoint says that you're starting to have a bit of a speeding issue there. So that was an interesting data point to help guide our recommendations. We also collected daily traffic volume data. So you can see here, this is the amount of vehicles in a day that travel along Georgia Avenue during those same days we got the speed data. So the highest amount of traffic is on the southern end towards the river. We've got about 25,000 vehicles per day. That number starts to decrease as you get further up through downtown as traffic disperses and distributes along the side streets. And then it starts to pick up a little bit again on the northern end. Starts creeping back up over that 18,000 mark. We also looked into the future to try to estimate what traffic could potentially be doing about 20 years or so from now. So we worked with Tommy and his planning team to determine what do we anticipate the growth rate to be within North Augusta. So citywide, the growth rate is higher than the 2% shown here, but we drilled down into it, and a lot of that growth, as I'm sure y'all are aware, is kind of on the outskirts of town. Looking at SCDOT historical traffic data here along Georgia Avenue and in the downtown area, it ended up being about a 2% annual growth that we've seen over the last 10 plus years. We applied that looking forward to project these volumes here for year 2047, which you can see, if everything continues to grow at the rate it's been growing, traffic volumes will increase substantially and get potentially up over 40,000 on the southern end and around 30,000 on the northern end. We also looked at crash and safety trends. So we got 6 years of crash data from South Carolina Department of Public Safety. We were able to map that, as you can see here on this graphic. Each of these dots represents a reported crash during that period. The yellow dots are the most prominent, that's angle, and then also a lot of red dots, which are rear end crashes. With a 4-lane undivided segment like we have along Georgia Avenue, it's not uncommon to see a lot of those rear ends as folks are stopping to turn into a driveway. They may not have a turn lane, and so it's a good likelihood that they might get rear-ended. And also just with driveways in general, folks turning in and out, the angle crashes seem to occur as a prominent crash type. In total, during that 6-year period, there was about 300 crashes reported, so on average about 50 crashes or so per year. The good news is most of the crashes were property damage only, so fender bender, no injuries. However, there were some injury crashes reported, which accounted for about a quarter of the total. And you can see here there were several bicycle and pedestrian crashes that occurred as well. This slide just shows a heat map, kind of overall, of taking those points and determining where are the crashes occurring most frequently. Buena Vista Avenue, Georgia Avenue ended up being the highest within the downtown area. You can see there's also hot spots there at Spring Grove and the Carolina Avenue intersection. We also looked at peak hour traffic operations to determine, how is traffic, how well is it doing during those peak hours. So this is level of service. You got AM peak hour and PM peak hour. So think of it in terms of school grades, with A being the best, F being the worst. Under these current conditions, you can see overall it's generally not too bad in the downtown area, with the exception of Pine Grove Avenue showed as a level of service D in the PM, with the folks on the side street experiencing a little bit higher delay trying to get to and from Georgia Avenue. So we had a couple public engagement meetings, the first one being focused on property and business owners in 2022. So we invited a handful of folks from Georgia Avenue to come out and learn about the project and provide their input. So a lot of the concerns that we got from that meeting, and you can see the sticky notes that they posted on the map we had, a lot of concerns related to parking. The angle parking on Georgia Avenue is easy to park when you're getting there, very difficult to back out, especially if it feels like folks are driving 50 miles an hour behind you. There were some concerns about a potential reduction of parking based on the project recommendations. Also, desire for improved pedestrian crossings and streetscapes above and beyond what's out there currently, and concerns about the perceived speeding issues, which we confirmed with the data as well. We also had a public engagement workshop about a month after the business owner workshop. Both of these meetings were held over at the community center. So very similar input from the public, a lot of concerns about traffic and congestion, speeding, desire for more walkability, and safety features for pedestrians. There was a question about exploring an opportunity to potentially shift some traffic over to West Avenue with some of these improvements, and then streetscape and beautifications as well. That public engagement workshop, I think we had about 25 or so attendees in person, and then another 75 or so online surveys that were filled out as well. We had online engagement too. So now getting into some of the strategies that we evaluated. Early on in the process, we talked about the feasibility of a road diet. If you're not familiar with what a road diet is, the graphic here is a good summation of it. So if you could take 4 lanes of an undivided roadway and convert that into 2 travel lanes with a center turn lane and some extra width on the side, then you're really repurposing a lot of the existing pavement width that you already have out there. Unfortunately for Georgia Avenue, given the traffic volumes that we have, this didn't work out to be a feasible option moving forward. As you can see in the bullet here, generally the number from the federal guidance is about 25,000 vehicles per less, where a road diet could be a good option. And we are reaching that 25,000 mark today, and we'll probably surpass that in the next couple of years. So definitely not a long-term strategy that we evaluated. One of the things that was discussed early on as well is gateway signage as a potential traffic calming strategy. The graphics you see here are from the North Augusta wayfinding plan that was prepared several years back. Gateway signage can be a good strategy to help slow down traffic. Research has shown about a 3 to 5 mile per hour decrease in traffic, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're talking, the difference between 40 and 35 miles an hour, that could be a noticeable difference. That's something that we recommend considering moving forward. Landscape medians is another one. This here is an example from downtown Lexington. Medians, if you have the width for them, can help kind of narrow traffic lanes and provide that tunneling effect to help folks slow down a little bit. I know this median shown here has a little bit taller trees in it. We don't know if that's specifically what it would look like here in North Augusta. That would be something we have to coordinate with the city and SCDOT moving forward. Certainly, if you have too much vegetation in the medians, result in some sight distance and visibility issues. Medians in general are something that would be a good strategy to help calm traffic through downtown. Another one is focusing on intersection improvements. So what we've got shown here is what's called a high visibility crosswalk. Out there on Georgia Avenue currently, there's just the two longitudinal lines that are okay, but this really emphasizes the fact that, hey, there's a crosswalk here. If you're a driver, you're going to be more alert and aware that there's a crossing at that location. Improved mid-block crossings is another big one that we definitely considered, and you'll see in the recommendations here in a few slides. So with the two lines and the sign that's out there today, it's better than nothing, but there's certainly a lot of room for improvement to help make that crossing safer for folks as they're crossing Georgia Avenue. So this example that's shown here is called an RRFB. It's a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So this is not a stoplight. You won't push the button and it'll turn a red light for traffic. But what it does do is the sign, the crossing sign you see there in yellow, if a pedestrian pushes the button on the side of the road, those two little rectangles will start flashing bright lights, alerting drivers, hey, there's about to be a pedestrian in the crosswalk, slow down.
Just so you know, we already have one of those installed on West Avenue at Pine Grove. So that's the signal that he's talking about.
Yeah, and to further enhance it for the Georgia Avenue recommendations, there's also a call out for in-street warning lights. So in the pavement, there's these little pucks that also will flash lights at the driver. Yeah, definitely a much more beefed up crossing, if you will, to help gather attention and alert drivers that someone's going to be in the roadway soon. So getting into the specific recommendations, I know there's a lot of arrows all over the place, so I'll try to cover as much of this as I can, and certainly if y'all have any specific questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. As noted earlier, we developed all the recommendations and then tried to rank them and lay them out in terms of which would be the best place to start and potentially easiest to implement, and then work outwards from there. And so that's what highlighted this first segment of Pine Grove Avenue to Spring Grove Avenue. The first being converting the angle parking to parallel parking. Angle parking, as you can imagine, takes up more width within the roadway cross section. By converting that to parallel, then you gain some extra width, which could then be used for putting the median in the middle to help divide traffic. Furthermore, the lanes along Georgia Avenue currently, they vary in width. There's some places where the lanes are 13 feet or maybe even wider in some locations. The wider the lanes you have, the faster people naturally want to drive. So by shrinking up those lanes, you're going to help slow traffic down as well. So those two things combined, the parking conversion and the lane narrowing, gives us the extra width to put in that 12-foot median that you see there. This is just at the conceptual stage at this point. So we've got it shown as a raised median, either brick pavers or low planter. The fine details of that will be worked out during the design. The RRFB that I mentioned a moment ago, the enhanced flashing crossing, we recommend installing those on both sides of the Pine Grove intersection that you see here. So those will be across Georgia Avenue. If someone pushes the button on any of those four corners, both of those crosswalks are going to light up and alert drivers, hey, there's somebody about to be crossing or is currently in the roadway. With the median also, you end up providing pedestrian refuge island at those crossings. If you have folks that are a little bit slower, or they need a longer amount of time to cross, they can cross half of the roadway, stop in the median, take a break. There will be another button that they can push there and continue their crossing if they need to. And I think the next slide shows a zoom in of that. Maybe it's a little bit further down. So looking at the next segment of Buena Vista to Pine Grove, this one is kind of shifting down a little bit to the south of where we just were. So you can see the RRFB crossings are still there. Again, there's no on-street parking here, but we still recommend narrowing up the lane widths to get some extra median width in there. You can see we now have a full 12-foot median going in front of Your Pie and Sheila's Bakery building to allow folks to turn left in and out of there as needed. Let's see what else is on this one. That was most of it for this one. Narrowing the lanes, putting in the median, and the RRFB crossing. Yeah, so this one is a zoom in of what that RRFB crossing would look like. So you can see on the lower right corner, that's what the sign looks like. There's the push button on it. Push that button, all the lights start flashing. We've got signs on both sides of the intersection as well as in the medians. And then on the lower left-hand corner, you can see the graphic of the in-road warning lights. So those will actually be in the pavement, shining up that driver's eyesight as they're driving through. So moving further up the street, you can see this is Spring Grove Avenue to Jackson Avenue. Again, converting the on-street parking from angle to parallel. By doing that, you gain width to have that combined with narrowing the lanes gives you the median width. So now there's an opportunity for a two-way left turn lane along this segment. High visibility crosswalks at the Spring Grove Avenue intersection and to help gain attention of drivers for folks there. And you can see on the northern end, we've got a turn lane shown. That's one of the options for the Georgia and Jackson Carolina Avenue intersection. We'll cover here in the next couple slides. Further down on the south end, just outside of where we are now, this is the Center Street to Buena Vista Avenue segment. Not a whole lot of changes recommended here. The biggest one is definitely narrowing up the lane widths. There's no on-street parking here, so narrowing up those lane widths may just result in a little bit wider shoulders that could be addressed with marking that could be worked out during the design phase. There is also a recommendation to install another RRFB crossing right there at Clifton Avenue. With the new development down here at the corner of Center Street and Georgia Avenue, as well as the Greenway extension going up Bluff and over to the alleyway. Having that crosswalk there connecting the Wade Hampton Veterans Park and getting folks to and from Georgia Avenue from the Greenway is definitely a priority for the city. So we've added that in as a recommendation. So this is a minor improvement option for the big five-leg intersection at Georgia and Carolina and Jackson. Kind of fast forward a little bit. So in the follow-up analysis, we did a signal warrant study. So we collected a full day's worth of traffic counts and also Sunday counts, since the two churches are on either side of this intersection, to see if there's enough traffic to warrant a traffic signal. There's a decent amount of traffic that goes through here, as I'm sure y'all are aware, in the morning and evening peaks. However, the rest of the day, there's not a lot of traffic that goes through this intersection off of the side streets of Carolina and Jackson. So it did not show a need for a traffic signal warrant. That was something that we referenced in the report, but is not shown as a recommendation here since we don't have the necessary volume for it. But this first one is kind of a minor improvements option. As y'all know, there's a lot of pavement out there. Folks that are coming downhill from Carolina, it's kind of a quick look over your shoulder, rolling stop, keeping going on Georgia Avenue. So to help, to help remedy that, what you see here in green is kind of taking out that extra pavement, filling it in with curb line and grass, realigning Carolina to get a little bit better angle. And then with the width that we gain along Georgia, a left turn lane could be included to service folks going up Georgia Avenue, turning left onto Carolina. There's no left turn lane there currently. As a result, there's a lot of rear end crashes that were reported in the data that we had. So this was the first cut recommendation that we came up with. As Tommy mentioned, council wanted us to take a closer look at this moving forward. We added the signal option, and then next is so next is the roundabout option. So this is a bit more in-depth than what we were just looking at. You can see the blue lines are the existing curb lines. So curb lines are impacted. There's going to be some additional right-of-way needed above and beyond what the current configuration is. The good news is 3 of the impacted parcels are currently owned by the city of North Augusta. There's a little bit of an impact on the First Baptist Church corner that you can see there. But overall, the roundabout was able to fit in there pretty well. It works from a traffic engineering standpoint, looking into year 2047, so that's an opening year plus 20 years. With Georgia Avenue being a 4-lane facility, it does have to be a dual-lane roundabout. However, not all the way around. The good news is it's very low volume coming off of Jackson Avenue and comparably lower volume coming off of on Carolina Avenue. So portions of the roundabout can be a single lane just for turning movements, and then the primary north-south Georgia Avenue movements have those dual lanes for traffic to go through. You can see the crosswalks shown here. The crosswalks that we have shown on the Georgia Avenue leg on the north side and the Carolina Avenue leg on the north side, those would be recommended to be RRFB crossings. Like we were talking about a moment ago, you push the button and it flashes to help gather drivers' attention as they're driving through this roundabout. Roundabouts are great from a traffic calming standpoint. Currently folks are coming down Georgia Avenue, they're going around that quick little curve and they don't really have a good reason to stop. With a roundabout, you're kind of forcing them to turn one way and then come around and yield to the folks that are currently in the roundabout, so it does have good traffic calming benefits. So the next steps moving on from this point is certainly just continuing to coordinate with the city staff and leadership, continued coordination with SCDOT on the roundabout option. We've discussed that with them, and early on they're receptive to it, but they want to dig into it a little bit more before they make a final decision. So that's where things stand currently. That's where my portion of it ends.
Yep. Let me know update.
There we go. So certainly happy to answer any questions, and if there are any follow-up questions after the fact, there's my contact info if y'all would like to reach out.
Are there any initial questions, and then we'll open it up for public discussion?
Do you know the difference in parking places doing the parallel versus, I know that's going to come up at some point.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if I have a total here. I want to say it was probably about a 25% reduction from angle to parallel. So that's a ballpark estimate. I think that the specifics of it, I believe, were in the report.
Okay. I figured it's probably in there somewhere, but I'm be honest, I did not read every page.
Sure,
of
sure.
this.
Yeah. There's certainly a reduction in parking going from angle to parallel, but we think that the benefits of gaining the width to put in the median and doing some of the other things along the corridor were beneficial.
And similarly, is the proportion of handicap spaces stay the same? Or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, so handicap spaces is something that's based off of a standard amount. So once the parking is set, then a certain percentage of those will be handicapped.
On the landscape medians, just, if we did that in the middle, is there, I'm just thinking like cost to the city, more people that back into them, or is there any, okay, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, so no, that's a great question. With landscape medians, a lot of times, at least Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong, SCDOT wants to put the maintenance responsibility for that on the city rather than on the state. So it's one of those things where if it does go the landscape route and there's some shrubbery in there, that would be a city maintenance responsibility.
Do we have any information, I guess, so when we calm traffic on a road, does it ever push people to other roads in order to be able to speed? Like I'm primarily concerned with West Avenue. Right. I just don't actually think people go very slow there either. So I just
right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think in reality, if a lot of these improvements or all these improvements are made on Georgia Avenue, there may be some folks that will reroute over to West or somewhere else. So that's just something else that I think would have to be evaluated in the future. It's like you solve one problem and then you may have to look elsewhere depending on what traffic does.
I have a question, and I apologize if it's an ignorant question or if I missed maybe some earlier discussion, but I was just thinking no one wishes for more traffic lights, but would it just make more sense to put another traffic light with crosswalks right in front of Sheila's on Georgia Avenue and slow traffic that way? Like, just sounds like a cheaper option than like reconfiguring the whole street. But of course, I'm sure that's been thought about by someone at some point.
Right. No, that's a good question. And the thing about a traffic signal, and I don't have all of the dimensions memorized, but SCDOT does have traffic signal spacing standards. And so if you were to put another traffic signal in at that location, then it would be too close to the other two on either end. So
If I could say something on that too. The not only is there spacing, but there's got to be a certain. You're the engineer. Jump in here.
right.
But there is also criteria that an intersection has to meet in they call it warrants to warrant a traffic signal there. If the city of North Augusta wants to put a traffic signal, and this was told to us by DOT when the question was posed, if we want to put a signal at a location, and we pay for it, North Augusta, but it hadn't tripped the warrant to require it from DOT, would DOT allow it? And we were told emphatically, no. DOT would not allow it unless there is a warrant that says it's necessary.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Tommy just said. And the reasoning for that from a traffic engineering standpoint is, I'm sure we've all driven through ones that may feel like this, but if you put in a signal where there's not enough volume, you're sitting there at a red light and you're like, where is everybody? And then people just start running it. It could potentially cause more problems than you're helping.
So, follow-up question, just if this was something that happened maybe behind closed doors at some point. So if we know there's a potential 25% reduction in parking spaces, but we know there's going to be an increase in traffic volume and hopefully an increase in business, in the main corridor, which I totally feel it's coming anyway. And, 5 years from now, I think it'll look even more different. For the correction of those spaces we've lost, was there ever a discussion of a parking deck further up the hill, or because I just feel like we're gonna.
I don't know of a discussion about a parking deck. There were some discussions on a different level outside of the planning department's purview of some possible additional parking options. I don't know how those played out. There may be others in the room that know a lot more about it than I do.
All right. So if you all go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. Joe, your professional expertise on parallel parking. If I've got a 5 o'clock in the afternoon stop in the middle of traffic and back my car into a parallel parking spot, I'm going to drive around the block and find another place to park. I rarely see anybody that parallel parks in one move as easily as. I know it's hard to back out of the angled parking lot, but it's also hard to come to a dead stop and back against traffic at a high traffic time of day. Your thoughts on putting that on a road with this kind of traffic on it, and would people actually utilize it if it was there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And from a parallel parking standpoint, I forgot to mention this in the presentation, it actually also helps with the traffic calming. So,
Of course, yeah.
People
are at a dead stop in front of us.
Yeah. And so, right now, if you're driving up or down Georgia Avenue and you see somebody with their reverse lights on coming out of an angled spot, you're probably just going to keep going.
Right.
But if you're going up and you see, a turn signal where it's easier for somebody to either A, pull out in front of you, or they're going to stop and have the turn signal on and back into their spot, then it kind of helps slow that traffic down. And if you are behind that person, then you're going to have to get over into the other lane to get around them or just wait.
But then you've got people changing lanes rapidly and potentially causing more accidents as they're swerving around, cars stopped in the middle of the road.
Can I ask him a question on that same topic? In doing away with angle parking, was some of that to give space for that increased median size, and could you accommodate the increased median size and still have angled parking?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that was one of the main drivers of the conversion from angle to parallel, is to gain that width to then put in the median. that combined with the lane narrowing. Again, I don't have the exact dimensions off the top of my head, but a parallel parking space definitely sticks out and protrudes into the pavement width more so than a parallel parking space that I think is about 8 feet wide. You're gaining the width to do the other traffic calming things as well.
Is that median required to be 12 feet, or could it be?
So 12 foot is the recommended standard. You could go a little bit narrower than that if you wanted to, but I think once you get down, uh, 10 or 11 feet, typically SCDOT doesn't want you to go any narrower.
This looks like it's basically maintaining the back of curb, the existing back of curb is basically where we're going to be maintaining on the sidewalks.
Correct. That was the initial plan, and again, these are all conceptual level drawings. So once this goes into design and there's more detailed surveying information, there may be some extra space in there, or it may be a little bit less where the median has to shrink down a little bit.
All right.
Just to kind of go to his point, and I've seen this in other, I'm trying to recall maybe where I've seen this. I'll say it's measured parallel parking spaces where there's like little curb cuts or little medians in between. So you don't necessarily have to back in. You can pull in where you're not necessarily stopping traffic because you have enough room to pull in. Is that something?
Talking about like buffers in between them?
Yeah. And would we have room to do that? Oh, wait. Everybody's laughing. I don't know. Just because, to go to his point of backing in and stopping traffic, you wouldn't.
Yeah, there's certainly a possibility to explore that. I think if you do a lot of that along the corridor, then it's just going to further reduce that parking count.
You were gonna. Oh, okay. And I think it's one of those things where when you first move to it, it's scary, but as you get more used to it, then lots of people will be able to do one move as you practice more. I promise you. I mean,
you know better drivers than I do.
well, I mean, to be honest, I mean, if you think about it, in Aiken, there are lots of parallel parking on Richland. So I think so. Lots of communities.
Right. I parallel park on Spring Grove all the time, but there's
older.
not traffic coming at me at 35 miles an hour at the time. So.
Yeah. But anyway. And let's see if the public has any.
What was that?
So we know that Commissioner Aaron would like. Okay. All right. All right. Do we have any comments or questions for Mr. Robertson? And what we would like to do is, again, if you come to the mic, please give your name and your address. We'd like for you to, if at all possible, keep your comments to 2 minutes so that your neighbors also have time to ask questions. And then we'll ask Mr. Robertson to respond to all of them at the end. That's okay. Sorry, you can come on. And if there's anyone in the audience who needs us to bring them a microphone, then please let us know as well. We'll bring it to you if you're unable to.
My main question goes to a number of discussions I've heard from the panel is the loss of parking. What have you done, Tom, or excuse me, Joe, I'm sorry, to look at replacing that parking? Years ago, we parked behind the businesses on George Avenue, whether it was on the east side or the west side. And now those parking lots are still there, but they're empty, not used at all. And also, you talked about traffic calming on Georgia Avenue. That's wonderful and needs to be done, but there was no comment about East Avenue modifications to allow people to travel up east as well as west to Georgia Avenue and Carolina Springs. That's all I have. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm John Hexamer.
Okay, thank you.
From Bowling Road, lived here for 50 years. So.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any other questions? Comments?
And all the way down here. Austin Taylor, 820 Carolina Avenue. I know with the downtown merchants we talked about, Mr. Slade's talking about it, the explosion of growth. Is there anything we can do to get them more sidewalk space for outside dining and things like that? Can we shrink the median size in order to grow the sidewalks would be my only comment on that. And in support of the traffic circle, considering we live on the bottom end of Carolina Avenue where we see folks flying up back and forth daily. So thank y'all.
Thank you. We may need to reference your in favor of a traffic circle because I think people hate traffic circles more than they do parallel parking. Oh, do you? I'm the opposite. Uh, all right, so Mr. Robertson, and I think if that's all, then if you could come up and respond to those, and then any further questions from commissioners, and then we'll have our discussion.
Yeah, so I appreciate the first question about the loss of parking and parking behind the businesses. That was something that we discussed early on, and there was also some discussion with the Business and Property Owners Workshop and also the Public Workshop about that parking back there. I think a lot of folks these days may not know that there's parking back there, and I think the other challenge is the parking lots. Some of them are not in great shape, and I think in talking with Tommy, a lot of those parking lots are on private property. It's privately owned. So there's some challenges there. It is something that we considered early on. If maybe this is what Tommy was referencing earlier, if there's an opportunity to work out some sort of agreement or cross-access easements for parking to help make up for any lost spaces on Georgia Avenue. But really digging into that at this point was outside of the scope of this study. It's not something that we had a chance to really explore in depth.
So let me ask, would that require an additional study around how to, I guess, what is the, or maybe Tommy, what is the next step for that?
And I believe that our assistant city administrator, working with the downtown business owners, has had that discussion with some property owners. I was not privy to it. I was not involved in the conversations. So all the information that I have is anecdotal. But the gist that I got is somewhere along the way that that was not going to be able to move forward. I don't know where that fell through, or it may be still something that could be done. But that would be through the administrator's office.
Okay.
They're handling that.
Okay, so we would need to ask the administrator's office for maybe a proposal around parking, additional parking spaces. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Robinson, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it. And then to answer the second gentleman's question about more sidewalk space, again, what we've done to date is conceptual in nature. So based off of GIS and aerial imagery, we got those widths and laid out everything. Certainly once we get specific survey information to move into the design phase, if there's extra width and opportunity through discussion with SCDOT and a desire to narrow that median in some places to get extra sidewalk space, I think it's something that could certainly be explored.
Oh, Mr. John did ask also about what thought has gone into traffic on East and West Avenues.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that part too. So yeah, again, that was something that was discussed early on as a potential of, if we make some improvements on Georgia Avenue, will traffic shift to others? Again, that was something that was determined at this point to be outside of the scope of this study, so we really couldn't dig into it in more detail.
Well, and I kind of feel like what you, I believe, mentioned earlier is as if it was when you brought it up, when it fixing this problem might start to cause another problem, that's just another problem you deal with at that point. It's hard to always know exactly what problem you might cause and fix it before it happens.
Right.
But I think, if you don't ever fix the first problem, you don't have the opportunity to fix others.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the tricky parts about traffic engineering in general is, folks are going to find either the shortest or most convenient route. So if you slow traffic down on Georgia Avenue and they can't drive 40 and a 30 anymore, maybe they are going to go over to West and address that if and when it happens.
If I could address Mr. Elliott's concern as well on West Avenue for an alternative path. If we did a study on that today, it would not be representative of the problems that we will see. So it's almost like you have to wait until that problem rears its head to do this study so you know what the fixes are.
Right. Well, and I'll say also for those that may not know is I do own a business on West Avenue, so that does and traffic is very fast. I try and give people the dirty stare when they drive by, although they don't see me, they're looking 2 miles down the road. So that is definitely something that is a concern, but I think it's just something that we will and the city has made improvements to start helping those things. And we're working on another business on Georgia, so I am walking across Georgia Avenue quite often, and it's scary. It's
Right.
scary for me, and I don't get too. I'm not too scared of that kind of stuff, but it's sketchy.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere in the middle. If you get stuck, you got this much to stand. So it's sketchy. Also, my wife reminded me that we have a 16-year-old son that parallel parks on West Avenue all the time, and he's terrified and has called us before on Georgia Avenue trying to back out. It's like, how do I back out? I can't see anything.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's not a perfect solution until you get Teslas that just drive themselves and you don't have to worry about it. Until everybody has that.
Yeah.
And so that, I think you've got to make the best decision that you can that will help solve the most problems. And then if it does create others, you deal with that as you go. I mean, growing is not something that you do one time and you're done. It's a constant process. It's a constant correction. So
I have a question either probably for Tommy or for Dr. Crawford. From a logistical standpoint, he's sort of, I don't want to say shoehorn, but his study is a very specific focus. But is there any limitation on us when we create the recommendation to say some of these elements that we're adding to Georgia Avenue, we could also add to West? For instance, I feel like the, whatever you call the high visibility crosswalk is not extremely expensive and is something that you could implement in West Avenue as well. I know that's outside of the scope of his study, but there's no possible way that could be harmful, I don't feel.
I would tell you that you are the planning commission. And you've been appointed to be the recommending body to city council. And you can recommend whatever you want to recommend, is my short answer there. There is a significant difference between West Avenue and Georgia Avenue.
mm-hmm.
Georgia Avenue belongs to the state of South, or actually it belongs to the U.S. government because it's a U.S. highway. And anything that we do in there, we have to get their permission. We can have all the money, the greatest plans, but if DOT says no, it's their property. They own it. West Avenue, by comparison, is owned by and maintained by the city of North Augusta. So we have a little less bureaucracy there. And that's why you were able to get the rapid, flashy lights, for lack of a better term, over on West Avenue much quicker than what you see it on Georgia.
So is the plan that we're looking at tonight, has this been approved by federal?
That, Joe and I have met, and JD McCauley, the assistant administrator, we've all met with SCDOT. They have not put a stamp of approval on it and say, yes, go forward, send no more. You can do this. They won't do that until they get into the design. But they have said, yes, we don't see any major problems with what you're proposing, even when we discuss the roundabout with them. Jump in here if I'm saying something wrong. But I was surprised, to be honest with you, that DOT was thinking a roundabout might be the answer for that intersection. So he's checked a lot of the boxes as we've gone along with the study. And with these studies, there's a lot of mother may I, because you have to get permission from them before you can go to the next step.
So we got the roundabout at Jackson, and I think that would do a lot to slow people down. But it looks like a lot of the heavy mile per hours are going onto the bridge or coming from the bridge into downtown. Was there any look at something in those veterans parks or in that area as far as another roundabout or a town square or a larger divided median to use that geometry to spread them out? Is that something that was looked at? Is there not enough area there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That was something that we considered early on. But as you could see, or even imagine just looking at it, those intersections on the southern end don't have nearly the amount of available space as the Georgia Carolina intersection. And really, the Georgia Carolina intersection works well because 3 of the properties around it are all city owned. So you don't have to go and knock on a property owner's door and say, hey, can we have a corner of your property to build a roundabout? So it's something that we did consider early on, but once we kind of vetted that and saw that there wasn't sufficient space for it, because again, with Georgia Avenue, it's a 4-lane road, so it has to be a 2-lane roundabout. You wouldn't be able to put in a small single lane.
And to go to the proposed gateway signage, would it be in theory in front of Veterans Park, further down the hill, like right here? Where would that potentially be?
Yeah, and we didn't get to that level of detail
Okay.
specifically where it would be, and I don't know if the wayfinding plan had a specific location either, but I think the intent would probably be between the bridge and Center Street, somewhere as you're coming up the hill into, you see the Welcome to South Carolina sign, and then maybe you see a North Augusta monument sign.
And just to remind everybody, I think you said the gateways could cost, was that a 10% reduction? Or 3
It
to
was about a 3 to 5
Um,
mile per
per
hour,
hour.
so yeah, about
About
10%
10%.
in this area.
So, I'm sorry, you have a couple other questions. Just want to make sure what's in and out of scope. The presentation had access from the Greenway to the new 13th Street Bridge. Is that in our scope at this point? Is that out of our scope?
The bridge is outside of the scope.
Okay.
That is, the bridge is being constructed by Georgia DOT. Right now, construction is being pushed back to 2027. So it's coming. That connection with the Greenway from the bridge is supposed to be in the design, but that's a separate project from what we're doing here.
Okay. And additionally, there's a nice map that shows the Greenway being extended up the alleyway. Is that part of this scope or not? Because it's not roadway. Okay.
All right. So let me, and Tommy, this is for you. So clarification on the recommendations. Do we need to make a recommendation on each of his, or the study in total with the recommendations? And then, so point of clarification on that. And then I think what I'm hearing from the commissioners, also then asking and entering formally into the record a plan for parking that is lost, as well as low cost options for the adjacent streets or parallel streets as a result of this. Okay, is that
I think a reduction of the medians to improve pedestrian sidewalks will be another addition that we'd like them to look at.
okay? And I think that could be reflected. That one would be applicable to the recommendation in the report for the median. So that would be in the recommendations of the report versus in addition to the other 2 recommendations that are not applicable to the report but are for the city itself. Is that correct?
And do we want to, since there was 2 proposals on the roundabout versus a turn, do we want to make a comment on that, or just leave them both in there?
I have a couple more questions about that, if that's okay.
Okay.
I think in the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that part of what you guys do is help look for funding for these things. Did you, maybe I missed it, did you talk about that, or have we looked into that? Because that's my biggest thing. I love roundabouts. I think they're super cool. I think it would be excellent for slowing traffic down coming down that hill, which is a pet peeve of mine. But the price difference is $3,466,000.
Right.
And so I'm the turning left would be, again, I go home, I drive that every day, multiple times a day. That would be great. If it's not there and I have to go a different way, I'm fine either way. But it is something that directly affects me, and I think the turning lane would be a wonderful option. And if it were my money, which let's be honest, some of it is, $3,466,000 extra dollars or $1,000 extra dollars is a big difference. So partially, is it worth that kind of extra money in your opinion? And or what are we getting for that? And the money, where exactly is all the money coming from?
So Tommy, yes.
If I may, Mr. Elliott, right now, this plan is broken into two phases. One phase is from the roundabout or from that intersection to the bridge. That money is been set aside for the improvements. We anticipate once, if and when this plan is adopted by council in May, it should go to them in May. We also anticipate exercising contract to start the design work for that section, because that's the next phase. So it's like boom, boom. That money has been set aside. I believe it may have been ARPA money. I'm not for sure exactly what that funding source is. And then the roundabout or that intersection is going to go on pause, for lack of a better expression. And that is funded through the Capital Project Sales Tax 5. And that money starts being collected, I believe, January 2026. So we're not collecting that money yet. So we'll have to start collecting that money and collect a substantial amount before the roundabout will be funded. That's the funding sources. Mr. Clifford has funding set aside up to the proposed roundabout or that intersection, however it's resolved. And then the remainder is looking at capital project sales tax 5, I think it is. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. And then there's the question of cost. That's one of those you can argue either way. And that's why I don't sit on council. And I don't sit on the planning commission. And I'm sure that our council North Augusta has a reputation of doing things right. They just do. Whenever I talk to my colleagues from around the state and around the Aiken area, we just do. When you look at this building, they say, wow. When you look at our public safety, it's like, wow. Georgia Avenue is going to be done right. And I've got confidence in our council that whatever decision they make is going to be right. And if they think that it's worth the $3.2 million for the good of the community, then they'll do that. And if they think that, no, that's too much, they would do the other.
So just to follow up, though, Mr. Robertson, what is the capacity difference between the minor improvements option, right? So does the minor improvements option get us to the next maybe 5 years in terms of capacity, but then the roundabout will take care of the next 20? Is there any?
Yeah, so really the capacity ends up being about the same. The difference becomes the roundabout has a much greater potential for traffic calming because you're forcing the Georgia Avenue traffic to make that kind of curvature move, go through the roundabout. And then also it's a significant improvement in terms of crash reduction over the minor improvements option. So you're going to have a lot less opportunity for angle crashes moving forward.
All right, so then that also, because we never did get an answer, Ms. Paradise, so that sounds like we may need to vote on the recommendations as numbered, and then doing so would force us to choose between, I think, A and B for number 5. Is that the appropriate way?
Or if you want to just make a list in that one motion, so I can list it in the resolution for council. However y'all want to do it, it's fine with me.
Make a list.
I just need to be able to write down what y'all want to put.
Yeah, no. Okay, all right. So, all right. So then what we'll do is, all right, let's do it this way. Then, if you all could please, it's on page 55. We'll go through the project prioritization and cost estimates, and we'll recommend to council for each. And then on the last one, we can if there's a motion to recommend A or B, which is the minor versus the traffic. Is that? And now the only thing is, Mr. Paradise, this does not include in the recommendations. These project recommendations do not include the gateway. So do we need to do a separate recommendation for the consideration of a gateway?
Yeah. Right now, yeah, you would need to do,
Okay.
if you want us to move forward, to do
Okay.
that, and I will put that out there to Mr. Clifford as well.
All right. So what we'll do is we'll start with let's do the first vote because I guess the gateway would come first. If you all don't mind, if there's a motion to recommend a gateway as part of the traffic calming.
I'll make the motion to recommend the gateway for traffic calming.
Second.
All right. Any further conversation?
Well, by gateway, are you talking about gateway signage?
Yes.
Should we say gateway signage?
Signage. We'll clarify. That motion was for gateway signage. All right. So it has been moved and seconded. Is there any other conversation or discussion?
Do we know a funding source for the gateway? Like, would that be included in this?
We do not. This would, really the gateway signage is not something that I've been involved in.
Okay.
I don't know if it's been discussed at other levels or not. So I don't have a funding source for that. And that's something that we haven't really looked at as far as the calming. But we can certainly make the recommendation and put it forward to City Council.
Okay. All right. That being said, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Thank you. And then now we will start on the project prioritization and cost estimates as stated on page 55. So if I could receive a recommendation for number 1, which is Pine Grove Avenue to Spring Grove Avenue at 1.19 million. And the recommended changes as reflected in the study, I guess.
Motion to approve Pine Grove to Spring Grove Avenue adjustments in their full nature to City Council.
Second.
All right. Any further conversation or discussion?
My only recommendation probably in all of these is if we could do little median or, places in between I know we may lose some parking, but if we could look at that potentially, if we have room to add little curbing in there to eliminate some of the parallel parking.
All right.
Is that a motion? Is that included in your motion
Is that
to put that in there?
Yes.
Okay, we can amend the motion to reflect, including consideration of additional cuts
What do you call it?
to assist with parallel parking. Buffers, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, what was? Okay. All right, so it has been moved. So the amended, okay. So we are making a motion for the suggested changes to Pine Grove and Spring Grove Avenue with the addition of additional buffers or cut-throughs for parallel parking. Is that all minds and hearts clear?
Yes.
Okay,
And
so it is amended.
So I have one question to go back to the widening of the sidewalks. Is that something we need to talk about with these since we're going kind of block by block?
So I was gonna do the consideration for the widening of the sidewalks. We were talking about in particular with the medians.
Well, I just didn't know
So-
since we're kind of doing these by block.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can because that was not in them in particular.
You do have
Let's do this.
You do have the 12-foot raised median there. If you wanted to make accommodations or something.
Okay, and then the other places we don't have a median, correct? That's the only median. All right, so let us start over. So this is the okay. So we're gonna recommend. Thank you for catching that. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna withdraw that motion and read it. Right.
I move to approve the suggested changes from Pine Grove to Spring Grove Avenue, listed under 7.2 of the traffic study. We do want council to also consider an option that would involve increasing buffers on the parallel parking and the potential for decreasing the median size to add additional sidewalk width.
Yes. All right, so seconded.
Second.
All right, any other conversation or discussion? All right, thank you all, and we'll vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Number 2, so is there a motion for the recommended changes for Buena Vista Avenue to Pine Grove at a cost of $260,000?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any other conversation or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Number 3, which is Spring Grove Avenue to Jackson Avenue at a cost of estimated cost of $470,000. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any conversation or discussion?
Same comment on consideration for parking.
Okay, so if we could amend. Okay, so could we amend the motion?
Yes, I'll make an amendment to the motion to approve with the consideration of adding some buffers for the parallel parking.
And reduction of the 12-foot median.
And a reduction of the 12
Yes,
foot
and
median.
the 12-foot median.
That was a turn lane median. Does that make a difference? Okay.
The turn lane could shrink down some, but not as significantly as a raised median.
Okay.
You still have to have sufficient width for a vehicle.
Sure.
You might be able to get it down to 10 feet.
Okay. All right. All right. So that is, we have a revised motion for both the median to be reduced in consideration and buffers for the parallel parking. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other conversation or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
Before we get to the next one, if we could go back one to number 2.
Yes.
Buena Vista to Pine Grove. It says a 12-foot median refuge and in-road flashing lights. Provide a 12-foot two-way left turn lane. Do you want the 12 feet still in there? And I'm just asking for, make sure you didn't overlook it.
No, we appreciate that. Let's do trying to think, do we need to just do a separate motion to add to recommendation to number 2? That's probably the easiest way. Let's do a separate motion if we could to add to the recommendations for number 2, Buena Vista and Pine Grove Avenue. Also consideration of reducing the median to increase sidewalks. So if I could have that motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. So we will then go to number 4.
So I'll make a motion to approve, and I do see, before we skip it, there's a small section here showing 12 feet in the middle. I guess right between the 2 turning lanes there in front of the park. So I guess we'll take into consideration narrowing that as much as we can.
Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And then for number 5, could I have a motion for either recommendation of minor improvement option A, which is $280,000, or a motion for the major improvement options at $3.74 million?
That's a tough one.
I'm B.
We'll make a motion.
Motion to approve Major improvement option B.
Second.
All right. Now, so it sounds like we have some conversation. Is there any conversation or question? Further discussion?
I know it's an investment, but I think long term it's your end cap. You know, you got one on both ends, and I think long term, you know, we're short term and long term, but I think it would look great, and if the calming is there, yeah.
I'm all for everything except the money part is definitely what's got me caught up because I think Plan A will solve a vast majority of the problems. And I just know for me and my family of four, groceries are expensive, and the more money we spend, the more taxes will have to go up. That money has to come from somewhere. So as much as it's like, oh, it's money that we're collecting, but that's the way taxes work. You spend it, you got to get it. That's the way it works for me. That's the way it works for the government. So that's my only hesitation.
I also would worry just a little bit that I don't know if there's a ton of pedestrian traffic right there, but I definitely feel like I would not feel comfortable doing all those crosswalks like with my children and stuff. Not that I'm not necessarily crossing right there a lot, but I would think maybe just consider with the traffic circle that I'm not sure if we would be dampening pedestrian accessibility.
Well, currently there's nothing there.
Would you? Well,
Yeah,
let's
there
ask
is
Mr. Rob.
nothing,
We have a
yes.
traffic engineer, so we can
Yeah,
ask
what do
him.
you think? Do you
All right.
think that would a traffic circle would make people more nervous to pass? Like, I don't know if there's a statistic on that.
No, that's a great question. And I think, as you mentioned, there's currently no crosswalk there today.
When the way it's split up to, you'd have 4 small sections with breaks in
Correct.
between all of those.
So let's, okay. So
Right.
commissioners, we could let Mr. Robinson answer the question about the impact for pedestrians on traffic circle.
No,
Thank you.
and he's on the right track. So
Okay.
the benefit of this, while looking at it, it does seem like a lot of crossings and it could potentially be scary. But the benefit here is you have 4 short crossings. Each of those crossings, it's one-way traffic. So you're only having to look this way. And for the ones on Georgia and Carolina avenues, that would be the push button RRFB. So I think it's definitely a safer option than what's out there today, which is no marked crosswalk.
And I think, if we've been to the tree lighting and you go down there, everybody's just walking across the road and as look away. I think I heard they're going to try to eliminate a road and add more parking. But, when they have events and stuff, I think as people park across the street and they have to walk across on either side, I think that would be beneficial too.
Okay. All right. Any other conversation? Questions? All right. If not, we'll call for the vote. So it has been moved and seconded that we recommend major improvement option B to council. That being said, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. Thank you. And then if we could, please, we had 2 additional requests that we would put in, I think, the form of a motion as well, to consider a plan for parking. And then we had an additional around looking at lowest cost options for the side streets or the parallel streets that are under the city jurisdiction. Correct? All right, so if I could have a motion either in tandem or separate for those 2.
Yes, I'll make a motion, I guess, for there to be more study done looking into parking options and where we might can try to make up for some of what we might lose, as well as traffic calming to compensate for what might be pushed over to other streets, particularly west and possibly slightly east.
All right, have
Second.
All right, thank you. Any other conversation? Okay. There being none, please vote yay if you're in favor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, commissioners, for getting through that. I think we got everything. All right. So thank you, Mr. Robertson.
Oh, I've got one question for Joe. When this was looked at, because in the feedback, when you look at the notes from the citizens, there was questions about like bike traffic. Was it ever a consideration to try to do a bike lane, or just not enough space to accommodate?
Yeah, when we started looking at it, there's not enough space currently because you've you've got the parking, and then you've got 4 lanes of traffic, and then the median to provide the pedestrian refuge. Without making the curve lines move further back from where they are, you're kind of limited on space. So.
Well, and if I can, I've just got some information from my wife is here and has been doing the counting of spaces. Apparently, we will lose about 9 parking spaces, which is not as bad as 25% sounds.
Out of how many?
How many? Also, we're be parking on any of the side roads is staying the same as well. So 17 between, so 32 between Pine Grove and Spring Grove.
25%.
9 and 14. Okay.
Yeah, and then, like, again, though, I think these are rough. But
Sure.
Mr. Robertson, I'm assuming these are rough drawings. I'm not sure if it's the space count is exact.
It should be pretty close.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right,
and I
thank
believe Mr. Robinson's going to be making a presentation at the council study session,
Okay.
and he'll have those numbers current and what's proposed spec'd out for council when he comes.
That will be perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. We appreciate you.
Y'all appreciate your time.
All right, Mr. Paradise, do you have any announcements or information that you'd like to share with us from the staff report?
We're staying busy as usual. Our staff has been helping support some finances difficulties as they work through some conversions on the computer software. So that has taken some of our workflow away, but our planners and our planning tech, we're all busy. Code enforcement is still busy. They're still working the remnants of Hurricane Helena. As you know, as one of the conditions for Parker's, it was, I forget the name, it's changed several times, but it's Parker's Apartments on Frontage Road at Exit 1. Okay, so y'all know who I'm talking about. One of the conditions that y'all placed on their site plan approval was the installation of a traffic light at Knob Cone and Martintown and some improvements there. I'm happy to tell you that that light is now up and it is flashing in the test mode. And so hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll be able to see it going operational. It is down to the wire. As y'all are aware, they were put under the condition that basically you don't move in. We've released some certificates of occupancy for the apartments, but we are holding some back till it's fully operational. So that's kind of our big news. That is something that y'all helped get us to. And I would also say, Mr. Elliott, as you look at the use of public funds, that was paid for by the developer and didn't cost the city a penny because of the way the Planning Commission approved that site plan. And that would be it for me, Dr. Crawford.
Well, as always, thank you to you and your colleagues in the planning office for all that you all do for our Fair North Augusta. And commissioners, thank you for your thoughtfulness and leadership.